Hello, everybody, and welcome to Know Your Shit podcast, where our knowledge and pride in what we do drives us to be excellent. My name is Josh Cadillac, and you're stuck with me in the driver's seat for today's show as we learn how to stop chasing paychecks and start how to build a business that we can be proud of, how to grow a business. And we do this by talking to some of the most successful entrepreneurs out there to see how they achieved success in business. We have a great show for you today because we have a great guest. Derrick, thank you so much for being here.
It's a privilege. I love your show, and I'm excited to be on it. So I was quite honored to have an invitation to come and talk with you.
It's great to have you here. Derrick, for all of our listeners, how do you pronounce your last name?
It's Chevalier.
Chevalier. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
A little French going on there, I would assume.
A little French go on. Whenever I'm down in the bayou, and I was just talking to my daughter who's on her way to New Orleans, people are walking up to me and they go, "You got family down here," and indeed there are. It's
right. There you go. The Chevaliers are amongst us.
Amongst us, yes, it is.
So, what is it that you do?
So I am a negotiation, specifically what we call an evolved negotiation trainer, consultant, also an author. And I am also certified as a Harvard negotiation mediator, or not negotiation, but mediator. So I do that as well. I've had a lot of experience there.
So what got you started on that rabbit trail?
Well, all of my training and education was leading toward law school. So I got degrees in pre-law, political science, but I also got degrees in theater and speech communication, debate, and all of that. All of skills that I thought I would use as a lawyer. And just as fate would have it, I ended up first becoming an educator. I taught at the university level. I was an administrator, left that, went into high-end luxury audio video sales, and from there into real estate, mortgage, and real estate brokering. And then from there, I met my mentor. I was going to go back to law school, and I met my mentor, Dr. Chester Karras, as you're aware, of the Karras Effective Negotiating Program. And so I met my passion at that point. And so I spent 15 years on the road presenting his program, and then became obsessed really with the topic of negotiation. And as an educator, I went back and all the way back to the beginning and worked my way up to contemporary literature.
Yeah, no, it's been a part of human existence since the beginning. I mean, nothing's really changed all that much with it, other than what we know about it and what we can kind of glean from what we picked up from all this recorded history. So, what do you like best about it, Derrick?
I think it is the fascination with human behavior and the fascination with how a skill can impact and create actions and reactions that to some extent are predictable. Because if we understand the human genome, we understand the background of a person, we understand their influences and what they've done in previous situations, we have a pretty good idea about how to structure a strategy or choose tactics specifically for that individual or for that situation. And it's problem solving. You're just using a framework to solve a problem. That's the way I look at it.
Right. And the cool part is that so many pieces go into the puzzle, right? The puzzle that we're presented, like one of the big ones is culture. That's one of the ones that I always talk to Mike. I mean, there are parts of the world where they cannot be happy unless the person on the other side of the transaction is miserable. If you're not sitting there swearing at them as you're stealing the food out of the mouths of my children, they can't be happy with what they did.
Yes.
And the place I like to come from with this is like figuring out how to give them what they need.
Exactly.
To get to the place where, I mean, the idea, the best is if we can get everybody to be happy with the deal and feel like they came out a winner. That's not always possible, but that in an ideal world, that's what you're shooting for, And so how do we get them there?
Well, here's my response to that. if we understand that somebody is being driven by their feelings, and last year we did some research and asked several million people, how do you determine whether or not the outcome was a win-win outcome? Overwhelmingly, people said, I felt good about the outcome,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
both parties gave up something and
absolutely.
were not happy. So what the evolved negotiator is going to say is, if you're driven by your feelings, then my strategy is going to focus on either persuading or influencing your feelings, because as long as I can do that, then you may be happy with an outcome where you absolutely got blasted
Yeah,
and
you got
have no
fleeced.
idea that it happened,
Yeah,
because it
but
has to do with you
but you
feel.
go along down the street nice and happy about
You feel,
it.
I talk about win-win negotiation. I say, a lot of times if people go, "Oh, that was so win-win," and I go, "Wow, well, you feel so good about it," and I go, "Yeah, win-win negotiation is where you feel really good, and it generally means somebody got screwed."
Absolutely. And frankly, what you're feeling good about usually is that they suffered as much as you did in the deal. Like they lost as much as you gave, like you feel good about what you gave up. And I mean, that ability, and I mean, when it really comes down to push comes to shove, like the true win-win where we make the pie bigger, in actuality requires a whole lot of things to line up, especially in real estate where I'm not the end decider whether or not I can have a collaborative negotiation. I need
Exactly.
three more collaborators. I need the other agent to be a collaborator, my buyer, and or my seller. I need both customers to be collaborators too.
Right.
I don't control that. Then we still must go in and find inequities. We have to find things in the deal that the two sides value differently and hope that we can take and match those disvaluations up, those inequities up, and make everybody, oh, I'm getting more pizza. Well, I'm getting more cheese. Oh, yeah. Like I need to make that. And that's a whole lot of crap to line up. And oftentimes I agree with you, Derrick. It's getting them to feel, making them wait instead of answering right away, making them experience the sense of loss. And, oh, gee, maybe they're not even going to call me back. Maybe I won't get it. I don't know. I mean, that's
Well,
my, what I sense.
I think you're right, but here are a couple axioms for you. Listen, perception trumps reality,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
coined that phrase 30 years ago, so not just for the present time. But what does that mean? It means that in the old days, perception is reality. That's not
Mhm.
true anymore. You can look up in the sky. You don't know if it's a satellite or a star. We don't know what's up there, right?
Mhm.
And so ultimately, you're negotiating someone's perception of what's going on,
Yeah, the
which may have
perspective on that.
nothing to do with reality. That's number one. And from a second point, of your point, a lot of people don't realize that they don't get to decide whether or not a deal is either cooperative nor whether it was win-win,
Mhm.
because a win-win requires a bilateral, or as you described, a trilateral agreement to engage in a bilateral or trilateral negotiation. But it only takes one of those three people to be in a competitive mode, and the entire process is competitive, and the other two people may have no idea that that's what's going on.
Yep. Absolutely. One of the big things I find, and it's interesting. The more I teach negotiation in my own way, I mean, I'm obviously not teaching it on the broad scope you are, microscopically just focused myopically on real estate. But the more the words persuasion and manipulation come out and become incredibly gray, because like I'm being persuasive, which kind of means that I'm manipulating the other person a little bit. I mean, manipulation has such a bad connotation to it, but whereas persuasion doesn't. Like, hey, look, I mean, it's obviously better than the bottle you have, right? And so, like, I find that it's the little things, these ancillary things, like, as I said, even making somebody wait before
Right,
sending the offer back, that
right.
allows that emotional stew to create an environment. Or even how I tell the other, hey, look, if you knew what I had to go through with my customer to get this signed for you, I'm telling you, I did my piece. I need you to, that's me like chipping away at the counter offer to make sure it's not like we can get it done. And it's so
Exactly.
much of that little stuff that winds up creating the emotional response that we
Well,
need.
exactly. So, one of the things that an evolved negotiator is going to do is look at the roots of words like persuasion, manipulation, and influence. So, here's the key that you find this in Evolve or Be Slaughtered. Persuasion is convincing someone by one means or another of a point of view. You're having an impact on their behavior or their point of view. Manipulation is dictated by the intent of the person who is persuading. So, in other words, persuasion is only manipulation if my intent is to persuade you regardless of its impact on you. I'm not interested in that.
Gotcha.
And therefore I'm willing to cross ethical, emotional, legal, and whatever
Malfeasance
lines.
attached. I got you.
Exactly. But here's the thing: persuasion doesn't happen without the other party being aware that it's taking place. So if we're talking about the bottle and you're saying this is a better bottle, well, I know that you are looking to persuade me about the bottle.
Right.
But the most important element of an evolved negotiator is to understand the difference between persuasion and influence. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
persuasion is the act of convincing, influence is the ability to have an impact on the thoughts, feelings, and behavior of another person, place, or thing without their being aware of it. So
Yep.
when you're influencing someone, they don't know it's happening. And it's not happening in an overt word, which goes back to what you're talking about when you mentioned culture. So a lot of people, especially today, conflate race and culture.
Oh,
Culture
yes.
is very simple. It has to do with what you eat, what you drink, how you dress, what you think is money or valuable, what you exchange, what religion you believe in, what books you read in, what dances you do, and what customs you grew up with in a family. That's
That's
culture,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, therefore, if I have cultural insight, I can create rapport by having cultural equivalency with you. So I create rapport, which reduces the distance between, it starts to make you feel that we have things in common. So
Breaks the
then
barrier
you'll,
down a little. Yeah.
yes. Well, what happens? Then now you feel that we have something in common. You're more open, and therefore, you then believe that we're in a cooperative mode. That's where the perception trumps reality comes in, because all of that can be sincere, but it's just as effective if it isn't sincere. You can do the
Correct.
same thing and have no intention of being fair. And the
Yep.
best negotiators have the ability to straddle those lines.
I mean, one of the interesting things is I am the offspring of what I would call the master negotiator, only because the level of competitive negotiation my father, old school Italian New Yorker, could come up with. I mean, Derrick, if he was negotiating a car or buying a vending machine or something, like, I couldn't be in the room because, I mean,
Yeah.
the level of discomfort, he was just, and so comfortable, and the unbroken eye contact, with the
Yeah.
beard and the just, right.
Yeah.
In fact, if you ever get bored and you want to watch a great one, there's a podcast we did with his former attorney named Larry Pino, and he tells the story about my father negotiating with a contractor about this building that had to be done for a school. My father was doing it as like his last big project,
Right.
and as a charity thing for a church to build this school, right? And it had to be done. And the contractor's like, it can't be done. It can't be done. It won't be done on time. And my father, and what's cool is the attorney, you'd like this guy because he's a real businessman. The guy's brilliant. So like he's not just the attorney guy. He understands the business side too, major entrepreneur. And so he says, whenever I would talk about negotiation anywhere in the country, I'd tell the story about your dad. He said, your father proceeds to use every level of persuasion going,
Right.
guilt, integrity, like, where are these kids gonna go? You said you gave your word, like all this stuff. And then finally he says, your father's not going to take it anymore. He says to him, I want you to look at my hand. I want you to see it as a gun. And I just cocked that gun and I'm pointing it at you. I mean, listen, but like deadpan. Right? You got one or two choices. You get it done, or I pull the trigger. If you really believe me, could you get it done? The contractor's looking at this old Italian guy like, oh my God, is he connected? Like, he doesn't know. He went the last one, fear and threats, right? The guy's like, yeah, I guess I could get it done. He says to him, whatever you thought you needed to do to get it done. They get up, he and the attorney get up and walk out.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, building is done. And
Building
so like,
is done.
it's so crazy because I mean, like that's a skill set. Like that particular tool set of it is such a subset of it. But
Yes.
there's a place for that too, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely. You're making my heart dance because I have a B fam, brother from another mother. And we were selling high-end electronics, and I see this guy. He's a Brooklyn, New Yorker, whose father was sold electronics as well. But we'd be in the store, and Kramer would be talking to somebody, and the next thing, and we made a lot of money on the warranties. So we called it cheese. So Kramer would be talking to this nice little couple. A little while later, from across the store, you could literally hear him. I'm telling you, you need this right now. Don't even buy it if you're not going to buy it because you're not allowing me to help you. When you come back, I can't help you and I want to help you and you're not letting me help you and you won't get me. And I would be thinking to myself, wait a second, this is impossible. How's this guy working here? By 20 points, he was the highest salesperson of warranties in the entire place, which is, and then I met him. He walks up to me one day. I'm sitting in the store. He walks up to me today, and I came back from lunch with a guy because I had just working in the store. And the next thing I know is a New York guy, and he goes, not for nothing. I go, what? He goes, the guy you went to lunch with is a scumbag. I said, who are you? He goes, yeah, I'm Kramer. I'm just telling you. I'm just letting you know, right? And I'm like, well, I don't really, At that moment, 4 policemen come in. They walk in the building. They put the guy in handcuffs and walk him out of the store for embezzling. It was, and yeah, there's Kramer. I never understood how he could get, but he had the ability to move people into a place where they didn't have a choice, and there is a place for that. Yes,
when I look at negotiation again, I don't get an opportunity to talk to somebody who spends this much time with it, and I spend a lot of time thinking about it. I think there's a whole bunch of different tools like in the tool belt, and some of them are like weird. So like, have you ever seen them put in hardwood floors, Derrick? They have a special nail gun, it's at an angle and you hit it with the hammer and that's it.
Yep.
You would never use it for anything else.
Right.
But if you were going to put in a hardwood floor, it's the perfect tool for it. And that's what I feel about like a lot of negotiating stuff. Like I have objection handles that I only use if the person is like a flat out bully and I need to deliver a right hook in order to get any respect in the room. Because sometimes the best collaborative negotiations start with a good right hook.
Exactly.
And it's like mutual respect kind of thing.
Exactly. That's such a great point. The more tools you have, the more skill you have, the more tools you have command of, the more opportunities and the more choices you have to pull out that specific tool for that specific negotiation. And that's what people who don't have a background or who don't actually learn negotiation, that's what they cannot do. They have 2 or 3 tools in their toolbox and they're using them for everything and then wondering why they're very successful sometimes, not successful at all, but they're using the right nail and the wrong hammer.
Yeah, you're using the claw end of the hammer to take out a screw. You can do it, but it's not going to work so great, and the hammer's going to break eventually.
Exactly.
It's kind of an interesting thing, and I'm just thinking because I've had a lot of negotiations that I kind of post game, like it's successful, and I post game what happened, and especially when the egos get big, right? I find that a lot of times I have to walk in and like 2 stags butting heads. I got to bang heads for a while until I prove that the seat that I have, I earn the right to my seat at the table, right? And it's the ability almost to, it's like tennis. You got to be able to break the serve in order to have a shot to win the game.
Right.
And I find, the more high end a lot of times the people that I deal with, the more I find myself, I'm dealing with the CPA for the developer who wants to know why the hell they're paying me when they already got him to take it, and I find that if you can take and kind of sort of give as good as you get through
Right.
some of that, you get to a place where mutual respect can be earned. But there's really not a path forward that I found otherwise without just sort of sitting there and trading shots for a little while.
Well, again, you're describing a specific situation with specific dynamics, and that's mano a mano, right? It reminds me of when we were kids, and somebody is bullying you, teasing you. I was a fat kid, I kind of loved it because I ate a lot and I had no problem with being fat. People, oh, you're a big Jello, and I go, yes, and I'm going home and eat more and could have more Jello tomorrow. So
Food is good.
that's it. Food is, and my mom got. I was like 4'8" and a 46 in the waist. Had about. I, I was literally a ball, but so
A four
people
by
are you're
four.
you're
Yeah, a four by
Jello.
four.
You're shaking all over there. So at some one point, guys needling me's in my face and whatever. And at some point, I kind of lost it, and we went at it. And of course, after that, that becomes a best friend
Yep,
on the playground. So
absolutely.
there are times if you walk into a room and you sense that you're negotiating with someone that requires that in order to earn your respect, you got to do it. But I've got an axiom for you, and here
Sure.
it's an evolved axiom. Here, the antidote to any tactic or technique is the tactic or technique, or its opposite, elevated.
Yep, I get
So
that.
right? So the thing is, if you're dealing with someone who's coming at you that way, you can go right at them and you elevate, and of course, you're going to earn your space. On the other hand, you could go completely the other way, because if you're dealing with someone who's very, very aggressive, the greatest tool you have is to shut down. It's no fun for a bully to beat someone else who's not fighting back. So you can literally let them uh, blow themselves out, yell and scream, beat it, to do whatever they want, and sit with no reaction, or even more so, appear to be afraid. And the more afraid you are, the smaller they get,
Yep,
because they're expecting a fight and don't get one.
yep.
So that chemical reaction will work pretty perfectly, and that's what you want to have the ability to do: read the situation and then determine what that antidote is, depending on
Absolutely.
where you want to go.
Like I know this one. I know how to play this. And what's even better is to have a handful of cards that any one of these will work. Which is the best? What's the best tool? I could do with three different tools. What's the
Yes.
tool that's going to be the best one to get the net result that we want at the end of the day?
Absolutely. Now, there's another key thing, and this is important in real estate, in particular, that I found, and that's this: an evolved negotiator in real estate. Many real estate professionals are focused on the outcome that they have predicted or that they've decided that they want, right?
Hmm.
So they want XYZ for their home, or whichever it is, buying or selling.
Right.
The agent or the broker wants XYZ for their services, okay?
Yep.
So we go into it with a lot of assumptions and presumptions about what the house is worth, about what we're worth, and about what we're willing to get. An evolved negotiator really goes into a negotiation not interested in what they already know. So if I already know, I in 30 years as a broker, there have been two or three times where I didn't figure a value out long before there was an appraisal. I know what those numbers are going to be when we're done, way early.
Yeah.
Now, so from that moment when I've done those calculations, I'm done with that.
Yeah.
Now my objective becomes, how do I find out what I don't know about you, what I don't know about the buyer, the broker, the realtor, the everyone else in that transaction, what don't I know about them, and how do I find out what I don't know about them? The result is that as I find out what I didn't know before I did all these calculations, now that gives me an opportunity to change what those calculations were. I know what they are, but I'm not interested in those. I'm interested in the outcome that nobody else sees. And that's only going to come from my discovering what I don't know about what your want or your need or what your driving force is. And the only way you get there is to be focused on it. So, one of the things that I'd say this, especially in real estate, but in any type of negotiation, if the outcome of a negotiation is exactly as you thought it was going to be when you went into the negotiation, either you got screwed or you screwed someone else. There's not possible any other way. First, the best deal likely was left on the table. There's no possible way that you could have predicted, and I mean editorially, that one can predict what the outcome is going to be when other people are involved, when the estimates and assumptions and presumptions are on your head in your head are all driven by you. So you
Yeah.
end up actually negotiating with yourself and then thinking that you did such a great job. You did not do a great job. What you did was drive an outcome that in many cases was probably uh, pretty possible to get. That's not, I'm looking for an outcome that nobody saw coming because
Yeah.
they weren't focused on discovering what they didn't know.
Well, I mean, as you said at the beginning, it's putting together a puzzle, right? And I have to assess the shape of the remaining pieces that I am unfamiliar with in order to take and best assemble a picture that is the best that it can be.
That's a beautiful metaphor.
I,
And
I live in the realm of metaphor.
I
It's
love
my
that
jam.
one. So I'll share something. One of the metaphors in real estate and a lot of negotiation in business that people use, for instance, is chess. Use a puzzle, use a chess. Now, chess is a phenomenal metaphor for negotiation and business
Mhm.
to a point that every real estate transaction, every business transaction has the same board. For instance, people will ask me, what kind of negotiation do you do? That's like asking me, what kind of chess do I play? Because every chessboard, chess hasn't changed in 400 years. Every chessboard is 8 down and 8 across. And every business situation has a king, a queen, a rook, a pawn, whatever. And
Yep.
some people may be playing double
Pieces.
roles.
Yeah.
But the comparison ends right there. And the difference is that when I play chess, no matter where it is in the world, or what type of board we're playing on, I know and you know the limitations of every
Yeah.
piece on that board. So the metaphor is absolutely ends there because in a real estate transaction, the owner of the property or the business may have very little to do with the outcome or the decisions that are made during that process. They may be being influenced by someone you didn't even consider was in the deal, right?
Right.
So, and also in real life, a pawn may be the king,
Yep. Or be
but we
playing the
don't
role of
think about that.
kingmaker. I get you. Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's a thing. You don't know all the historical that's gone into making the moment in time in which you're entering into this venture. There's a historical behind this and all sorts of components. Once again, getting the shape of all the pieces that go into making up this puzzle.
Yes, the shape
It's
and the limitations and the role of each of those places, because we may have a puzzle, but the point is who's putting the pieces together. One person's identifying somebody else, maybe placing the piece, right? We need to know who that is. And we're only going to do that if we're focused on finding that out and not focused on the an outcome that we determined on our own.
sure. And so I suppose it's a balancing act between assumptions, which we have to have some of, and then data getting? I mean, one of the big issues that we have in real estate, and I'm sure you see this in sales, people don't like to be sold to, so they come with preconceived notions at a salesperson. They don't want to take and tell us honest answers of the information that we need in order to take and get the shape of the puzzle piece, right? And so
Right.
the assumption that I always come in with is I have to earn the respect to get the information that I need to then assess and best get them where they need to go, try to help them get what they need, and then figure out how do I take and now get the other side to meet us there. And maybe my favorite is exceed what they thought we were going to get. I love that.
Right, I love that. Well, you're absolutely right. So let's put that in the context of an evolved negotiator. So an assumption, every assumption is a belief. At the end of the day, look it up. It's simple. It's a belief. So we're not arguing with the assumption, but what you actually described was a presumption.
Mhm.
Because when you said, I have this assumption that I have to learn the respect, the moment you take an action to earn that respect, that belief becomes a presumption because a presumption is a belief that we've acted on. That's
Okay.
the difference, right? So when we act on that presumption, we're now committed. So if your objective is I've got to open this person up because there are things I don't know and things they're not going to tell me, that part of what I'm doing is determining what prescription or what behaviors do I need to demonstrate that will encourage that person to open up and provide the information that you might think, doesn't it make sense that they would give you that information when in fact human beings don't make any sense at all. That's
No, they're nuts. Unless you think they're crazy on the way in. So speaking of that and talking about what makes people up, what would you say, Derrick, taking that step back look that we kind of have to, that introspective look, what in your makeup makes you good at what you do?
I think, well, I have a really eclectic background, but where negotiation is concerned, I think it has to do with a very solid command of several different negotiation masteries. So, in other words, I've taken a Bruce Lee approach, right?
Okay.
So Bruce Lee, be like water. Well, how did he become have the ability to be like water? He was a master of seven different martial arts disciplines, so
Mhm.
that he ultimately could take from each of those and create a martial art that was his own. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what I do as a negotiator. I have a background that allows me to blend a lot of things going back from Sun Tzu to pretty much everybody else to this day and make selections to come up with a painting that nobody's seen before,
Gotcha.
right?
Yeah, yeah. The synergy of all is greater than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
Um, what would you say makes you passionate about it, bud?
Well, the passion comes from the discipline and the joy I have from doing it, and from seeing not just the outcomes. I use what I do as a basis to achieve two things: one, riches, because you need money to pay the mortgage,
Yeah, yeah. And it
but
gives you
I
freedom.
have an equal dedication and focus on wealth, which is an appreciation for the things that money cannot buy.
Right.
One without the other is an empty life. So when I take my skill, for instance, last year, we were able to help a nonprofit that was having an issue with a multi-billion dollar company, software company. Now they're represented by a very significant law firm
Mhm.
who said, we can't help you. We got involved and were able to recover $1 million and put it into that their bank account, which is now helping thousands of children. We were
Right.
then able to take the $200,000 fee that we would have earned and give it to them, so
Mhm.
that there's joy in that
Of course.
that makes me passionate, and the work I do allows me to be able to invest in non pro bono and other projects that are just because you think you're doing it for somebody else or they think they're doing it for them, when you're doing it for yourself, for the joy of executing and having
Yep.
a purpose.
So Let's talk about from what for most people is the toughest negotiation of them all. How do you manage yourself, Derek? Unmet expectations, when things don't go the way that you want them to, when there's disappointment. Entrepreneurs, we live with disappointment constantly. How do you take and keep yourself? How do you talk Derek back into the ring after the big knockdown?
That's such a great question. And I stopped pursuing balance in life.
Okay.
People that pursue balance will always fail. The reason is balance is impossible unless you can control all of the variables, which you never can. There are
Right.
always going to be unexpected things that you don't see. So if you're looking for balance, you're going to be out of balance most of the time.
Right.
I replace that with seeking harmony.
Okay.
Harmony in life means that there are always going to be elements that are great and elements that are not so great, but I'm able to place those into that harmony in a way that allows me to maintain balance. I'll tell you just a quick story. Herbie Hancock, the great jazz pianist, when he was 17 was playing with Miles Davis, consummate trumpet player. So he said he was playing with him in a concert, and Herbie Hancock said he played an absolute wrong chord in the middle of a very famous song.
Hmm.
And he said he felt like he would die, you know. Miles Davis, he said, turned to him, lowered his head, lowered his glasses, and looked right at him. And Herbie Hancock said he felt like, dying. Miles Davis turned around, pushed his glasses back up, put the trumpet to his mouth, and hit a chord that brought a resolution to Herbie Hancock's mistake
Hmm.
and made it sound as though it was supposed to be there. That's harmony.
Right.
That's harmony. It's the
So that
ability
the aggregate comes together to make,
to, well,
yeah,
you find a way to resolve it. It's a mistake, and there's bad things that
it's going
happen.
to happen. It's going to happen.
But
I
the
mean, look,
idea that I
you
don't
make
live with
promises
the
and you get a flat
illusion.
tire. It happens.
Right. Yeah. So I don't live with the idea that everything's going to be perfect. And the second thing is I kind of live in a state of flux. I recognize that I am in a state of flux in which things are going to happen that are out of my control. But what I do have control over is how I approach them and
Of
how
course.
I allow them to impact my behavior.
Absolutely. No, that is the one thing that we do have some, probably our greatest influence over, maybe not direct control, but at least influence, which is ourself. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
and so, uh, really, really quickly, Derek, and I want to give you a chance to repeat the name of your book. You've said it a couple of times, but I want to make sure our listeners hear it so that they can go out and grab a copy of it. What was the name again?
Thank you. It's called Evolve or Be Slaughtered: Negotiation for the 21st Century.
So that very sugar coated title. I love it, brother. I am all about no sugar. Let's give it to you straight. Who's got the time for the sugar? Um, let me ask you this, Derek. As you look at the market right now, as you look at what's going on out there, where do you see the opportunity today?
Well, love the question. I see the opportunity. I'm an investor as well. I see opportunity where other people see fear. For instance, there's great opportunity in a certain automotive company that is at 50% of its value. Now, you can hate the politics, but if you love money, that's an
I
opportunity.
have a buy order in right now. I'm not going to say
Exactly.
what my strike
So
price is, but
yes. So,
it's
but
going to,
now
it's
in real estate,
hoping it
I
fills.
look for markets where other people are running from. For instance, I'm an investor in places like Michigan.
Hmm.
So
Detroit was a great
Michigan,
opportunity. Yeah.
yeah, Michigan, Ohio, there are places where that have all of the ingredients. They've gone through obsolescence and
Yep.
they are slowly coming back, and in some areas pretty aggressively. So I think the opportunity is outside of wherever your normal sphere of business is, to stand back away from that and look at the idea that technology makes it completely possible to invest across the United States and perhaps even
Absolutely.
elsewhere. when in
Well,
years past that
what's
was
great about
much
you're
more
talking about
difficult.
is these places you're talking about have the industrial infrastructure that
Yes.
that um, syncs nicely with where the policy is now. I keep telling people, look, warehouse. I'm not huge on warehouse right now because
Right.
when there's less importing and exporting, there's less of a need. It doesn't go away because if there's a more industrial manufacturing
Right.
locally, you still need some, but it's not as much. It's not as warehouse intensive. So I don't love warehouse as much, but industrial and the places like Ohio and Michigan that have the infrastructure in place, the
Yes.
railroad lines already run there and all this kind of stuff. What do? You not only buy the industrial land, you buy the residential and everything around that because just like the old railroad towns,
Yes.
the plant comes back, boom.
Yes, yeah. You know what? Years and years ago, a friend of mine, somebody I know you love, you know Rob Reiner, right? I love his work, but he's also a personal friend. And I learned a great when I first met him. We were talking, and I said, I remember being in Oil City, Pennsylvania, and I said that's really where the oil business started. And I saw Rob, he didn't know me very well. So I see him kind of looking down and he's running his fingers. He absolutely is like, yeah, this guy is full of shit making this up, Oil City,
Mm-mm, no, no,
Pennsylvania.
you're right.
So he looks and then he looks at it and he puts his phone down and goes, okay, guy must be all right.
Yeah, yeah,
15 years ago. But yeah, I was telling him the entire downtown was for sale. City Hall was for sale, the entire place. That
yep.
ain't the case today. Their opportunity is outside of your comfort zone. That's where it lies.
Yeah, no, I love it. So, Derek, going to go to a little bit more of a lightning roundish kind of thing, kind of your first take on these, so we can get to know you a little better and kind of see what you think when push comes to shove. Here, what would you say is the most important thing you've learned in the process of doing everything that you've done?
The most important thing I've learned, um, forgiveness.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's good. Hanging on to stuff, not good. With
Yeah.
yourself, with
Oh,
others, everything.
yeah.
Most proud of in business that you've accomplished.
I would say evolved the
Okay.
development of the snuff system because it is an absolute hybrid of everything that's happened in the last many decades. Certainly, it's the most significant advancement in negotiation theory in the last 60 years. So I'm very proud of
It's
that.
a good one. Similar question, but a little bit more personal. Most proud of in life you've accomplished.
Oh, the people I love,
Yeah, man.
the people I love, and that love me.
That's the big one. That's the big one.
Yeah.
They put up with me still. I must be doing something right.
There's something right, Yeah.
All right. So what piece of advice, if you give one piece of advice to our listeners, what would it be?
It would be, with respect to your audience, it would be to choose, become a master of something.
Hmm.
Become a master of something, and everything else that you do, you compare and contrast to that mastery. So
Love it.
it allows you to have an anchor, and when you feel the most loss, it's the place you go back to, from which to start and restart.
All right. Love it. Famous person in history you'd want to meet if you could.
I would probably say Socrates, or I'm sorry, Plato.
All right.
One and the same, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, could be. Could be.
Yeah.
Socrates was, yeah. What person from your past would you want to sit down with and have lunch with today if you could?
Oh, Dr. Robert Haw, who was president of the community college I was at when I came back from Vietnam. I was very radical, and I was screaming and yelling and protesting and slamming my fist on tables. And I walked to a board of trustees meeting and slammed my fist and yelled. Next thing I knew, I got a note: "Hey, the president wants to see you." And I walked into his office, and he's a big guy, and he looked at me and he said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I said, "I'm making change." He goes, "No, you're not." He said, "You're just disrupting things and making people miserable for no reason. What are you doing with your life?" And I said, "Well, I want to change things." He said, "Then go do that and stop screaming." By the next semester in college, I was ASB president. I had a nonprofit called Food for People. And a lot of the rest of my life happened because of that input,
That
because of
one
somebody
person,
believing.
that
Yeah.
one person that said the right thing at the right time. If you want to talk
Yeah.
about where influence really is, that has been my prayer for a very long time, that I could maybe one day say the right thing that somebody needs to hear at the right time.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
changes the course of everything, man. That
Yeah.
is good stuff. So, last question I have for you, Derrick. Where can people find you?
Well, thank you so much. Well, we certainly have just going on the internet, stick my name in any of the servers or whatever, you'll find it there. Our website is h-c.com, really simple. And the book is available on Amazon or LinkedIn. Hook up with me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, we're there, or Facebook. So pretty easy to do.
All right. Well, Derrick, thank you so much for your time. It was great having a conversation with somebody who likes negotiating as much as I do. Don't always get to do that. Thank you for being on, sir.
It was a privilege, and thank you for sharing. I mean, I feel like I've known you a long time, which is really, really. I love your voice. I mean, your voice is. I'm surprised anybody ever says no to you, but if it happens, but I
Don't
love
worry,
it. I love.
my dating life is a clear example from years ago of a lot of people were very good at saying no.
Well, I love your show. I'll continue to listen, and I want to thank all of your listeners for allowing us to share a little bit. So, thank you for the privilege. I
And I
enjoyed
want to
it.
thank the listeners as well, guys. You see what I mean? There's never a good excuse not to know your shit. Till next time, guys.